Dungeon Reaper. A light novel by Bloodmoss. Chapter 10. Grim Adjustments. The Hollow Blade HQ was even more of an eyesore in the light of day. The cracked windows and mismatched brickwork gave the impression of a place that had survived one apocalypse and was barely holding out against another. Cain followed Penny inside, his boots echoing on the warped wooden floor. "Home sweet home," Penny said, glancing back at him. Or something like that. The group dispersed quickly, Lena and Bria toward what passed for a kitchen, and Tara to some dark corner where she could probably sharpen her weapons in peace. Penny led Cain down a side hallway. "You did good out there," she said over her shoulder. "Better than I expected, honestly. Still, you've got a lot to learn." They stopped in front of a door that looked sturdier than the others, as if it had been reinforced against whatever chaos might spill into the rest of the building. Penny pushed it open, revealing a room that was startlingly pristine compared to the rest of the HQ. Bookshelves lined the walls, packed with worn manuals, dungeon guides, and thick, leather-bound notebooks. A few tables and chairs sat in the center, their surfaces cluttered with maps and loose papers. "This," Penny said, gesturing grandly, "is where the magic happens." "Looks like where a librarian's nightmares happen," Cain muttered, eyeing the stacks of paper teetering on the edges of the tables. Penny smirked. "Maybe, but this is also where you'll get caught up on everything you should already know." Cain's stomach sank. "You're not serious. Ever heard of the digital age?" "Completely serious, and people learn better when they can physically read a book. Trust me, there's science behind it." She patted him on the shoulder. "Take today off. You earned it. But tomorrow? Bright and early. Diligent study." Cain groaned, running a hand through his hair. "This is cruel and unusual punishment. I'll be out with the sisters getting the best price for our haul. You'll have the place to yourself for a while," Penny said cheerfully as she turned and headed for the door. "Enjoy your day off, Grim. You'll need it." Cain sprawled on a battered couch in the common area, a beat-up laptop balanced on his knees. He had planned to relax, maybe zone out with some mindless videos, but his thoughts kept drifting back to one thing: the scythe. His sword, Maria's gift, with the word scythe engraved along the blade, had been a lifesaver in the dungeon. But it wasn't the weapon Cain truly wanted. Every swing, every block, felt like a betrayal of the image he was trying to build for himself. The scythe was more than just a weapon to him. It was an aesthetic, a persona, a part of the Reaper he was trying to become. The thought of giving up on it, of resigning himself to being just another sword-swinging adventurer, made his teeth clench. "No way," Cain muttered, typing furiously into the search bar. "If I'm going to do this, I'm doing it right." A search query led him down an internet rabbit hole, and before long, he was watching a grainy video of someone demonstrating Ryukyu Kempo, a martial arts style from Okinawa. The instructor wielded a pair of short sickles with wickedly sharp blades, moving with a grace and precision that made Cain sit up straighter. The video cut to an explanation of the style's origins. Cain clicked play, leaning closer as the narrator spoke. Okinawan martial artists adapted Ryukyu Kempo from traditional farming tools, like sickles and staffs, during a time when commoners were forbidden to own weapons. Necessity drove innovation, and they turned the tools of their labor into tools of survival. Cain watched, transfixed, as the video showed practitioners demonstrating techniques with bow staffs, and other weapons. The movements were fluid but lethal, designed for efficiency. He paused the video, leaning back against the couch. "Okay, that's badass." The screen autoplayed another video, this time focusing on a martial arts dojo an hour and a half away from the city. The instructor, an older man with a grizzled face and a soft smile, spoke about how the principles of Ryukyu Kempo could be applied to modern weapons and techniques. Cain's mind raced. The scythe wasn't exactly a but the principles were the same, turning a tool into a weapon, adapting and refining it for combat. He felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the answer. Then the practicalities hit him. "Right," Cain muttered, clicking off the video. "No car. No time. Awesome." He let the laptop fall closed and rubbed his temples. Fixing up the battle wagon had to wait, but without transportation, getting to the dojo was impossible. Still, the seed was planted. The thought of mastering his spirit scythe, of moving with the same lethal grace as the martial artists in the videos, lit a spark of determination in him. The HQ was quiet as Cain stretched out on the battered couch, the borrowed laptop resting on the floor beside him. The screen had gone dark after hours of research, and his mind buzzed with fragments of martial arts techniques and dojo possibilities. But now, something else buzzed beneath his skin. The sensation started as a faint hum, a vibration he couldn't quite place. At first, he thought it was fatigue, the side effect of too much caffeine and too little sleep. But the feeling grew stronger, sharper, pulling at his chest like an invisible tether. Cain sat up, his breath catching. What the hell? It wasn't painful, but it was insistent, like a hand reaching into his ribcage and yanking him toward some unseen destination. He instinctively knew what it meant. Somehow, the in-between was calling him. The pull grew stronger, almost urgent, as if a timer were ticking down inside him. He glanced at the time on his aide, a little after 5 p.m. I guess this isn't a request, Cain muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Not knowing what else to do, he grabbed his coat and headed for the parking lot. The air was crisp and still as he climbed into his rusted metro car, reclining the driver's seat as far back as it would go. If I'm getting dragged off, might as well be comfortable, he mumbled, pulling his jacket tighter. The tug intensified as his eyelids grew heavier. His last conscious thought was how the sensation wasn't entirely unpleasant, more like falling, as though the world was tilting beneath him. And then he landed. Cain blinked, disoriented as his surroundings snapped into focus. He was seated in a booth, the faint hum of a coffee machine and the clatter of distant dishes grounding him in a surreal sense of normalcy. The table in front of him held a mug of coffee, its contents lukewarm and watery, steam barely rising from the surface. The mug itself was black and silver, with the word Grim emblazoned across the front next to a small scythe emblem. Across from him sat Tobias, his massive arms crossed as he leaned back in the booth. His presence filled the space, his piercing gaze landing on Cain with an almost fatherly mixture of approval and exasperation. Right on time, Tobias rumbled, gesturing at the coffee mug. Your coffee was getting cold. It's your initiation gift. Cain stared at the mug, his fingers brushing over the smooth surface. The scythe emblem gleamed faintly in the cafe's muted light, and the word Grim felt oddly reassuring as it stared back at him. He looked up at Tobias, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Thanks, Tobias. Really. For the mug, for backing me up out there, for all of it. Tobias grunted, leaning back in the booth. You're a Reaper now, kid. Gotta start acting like it. If it takes you looking like one to do the job right, then I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong, it's still goofy as fuck all, but who am I to judge what we choose to be? Cain chuckled softly, thinking about the hot blonde with the commanding attitude. He still had problems relating that picture to this mountain across the table. He lifted the coffee for a sip. It was as bad as it looked, lukewarm and watery, but the gesture behind it made it taste better than anything he'd had in days. Before he could say more, Shaniqua slid into the booth with her usual flair. Well. If it isn't our newbie Reaper, Shaniqua said, sliding into the booth next to Tobias. She glanced at the mug and smirked. Nice branding. You're really going to settle into the whole Grim Reaper shtick. She leaned back, rolling her eyes. You know what, I don't even care. Let's hear it. How'd the dungeon go? Cain hesitated, glancing at Tobias. The hulking man shrugged. It's your report, kid. Might as well get used to making them. With a sigh, Cain recounted the events of the dungeon, his struggles, his mistakes, and the moments of clarity when he felt like he was finally getting the hang of being a Reaper. Tobias added the occasional note, his tone gruff but not unkind. The cafe seemed to shift slightly as Maria and Edgar took seats at nearby tables. Maria kicked her legs up onto the seat opposite her, her posture relaxed, while Edgar sat with the kind of stiff formality that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Perfect timing, Shaniqua said, folding her hands on the table and eyeing Cain. He suppressed a groan, raising his grim mug for another sip of the watery coffee. It tasted no better the second time. I heard you survived, Edgar said, his voice dry as sandpaper. Barely. Thanks for the vote of confidence, and also, thanks for sending me that tip on my abilities. You are truly a master tactician, Cain replied, setting the mug down. Edgar gave him a nod, his expression softening slightly. If you need me to help with synergy in the future, let me know. I'm happy to assist. It only makes our job easier when you know what you're doing. Cain turned toward Maria and grinned. And thank you for the sword. It was spectacular. Maria waved a hand dismissively. That old thing? It was just lying around. Shaniqua lifted her eyebrows in surprise. You got a sword from Clover? Impressive. Cain sat up a little straighter, his eyes widening. Your Clover? The world-famous weaponsmith Clover. Maria smirked, leaning back. The one and only. I have a Clover, Cain said, nodding to himself. That is impressive. Edgar snorted, leaning slightly toward Tobias. So I gave him a killer power combo, Maria gave him a sword worth who knows how much, and Tobias here got him a coffee mug and probably let the kid look at her ass all day, which is worth a lot, I might add. He gave Tobias a wink. Tobias gave a cheesy smile, muttering, damn right it is. Edgar turned his attention to Shaniqua. What did you give him, oh great supervisor, leaning into his Chinese accent. Shaniqua grinned, her expression mischievous. I made his dreams come true. I made his actual name Cain, so now I'll call him Cain and not Keith. He can stop bothering everyone about it. Cain raised his mug. Call me Grim now. Shaniqua rolled her eyes dramatically. Not in a million fucking years, Cain. With that, Shaniqua clapped her hands sharply, the sound cutting through the laughter. All right, fun's over. Time to get serious. She looked at Tobias, her tone losing its usual humor. Because Tobias was forced into servitude with the hollow blades to compensate for Cain's lack of preparation, Maria will need to take on some of the Class C dungeons Tobias would normally handle. Maria groaned, throwing her head back dramatically. Seriously? That's not fair. How long is this going to last? Shaniqua glanced at Tobias. A month, was it? Tobias nodded, unfortunately. And, Shaniqua added, her gaze shifting to Edgar, you'll be taking on some of the Class B dungeons. Edgar's eyes narrowed. You're kidding. I never kid, Shaniqua said. At least not about dungeon assignments. Both Maria and Edgar turned their attention to Cain, their expressions varying degrees of displeasure. This is your fault, Grim, Maria said flatly. Cain held up his hands in mock surrender. Hey, I didn't ask for any of this. You could have at least asked for more prep time, Edgar snapped. Or not gotten Tobias involved in the first place, Maria added. Cain sighed, raising his mug in mock toast. To being everyone's favorite scapegoat. Cheers. Tobias snorted, the corner of his mouth twitching upward in the faintest hint of a smirk. Cain blinked awake, sunlight streaming through the windshield of his car. He groaned, shifting in the driver's seat as his mind struggled to piece together how he got there. The world outside was warm and quiet, with morning commuters just beginning to trickle into the streets. He wasn't sure if he had actually slept or if time had done its usual weird in-between thing. Every time he left that place, the Reaper's in-between, it felt like his body hit some kind of reset button. Either way, he felt amazing. Better than I have any right to, he muttered to himself, flexing his hands and rolling his shoulders. He should be unable to walk after everything that went down in the dungeon, but instead, he felt good as new. Better than new, actually. His stomach growled angrily, breaking the moment. All right. Food first, existential dread later. Sliding out of the car, he stretched and made his way toward HQ. The familiar building loomed ahead, its mismatched architecture somehow managing to look both imposing and perpetually unfinished. Stepping inside, he was greeted by the unmistakable chaos of Penny already hard at work. Time to hit the books, kid. Penny's voice rang out the second she spotted him. She didn't look up from the stack of papers she was furiously scribbling notes onto. I rearranged the study just for you. Take a section at a time. Cain stared at her, still trying to shake the remnants of sleep, or whatever passed for sleep. Good morning to you too, Penny. Penny ignored him, waving a pen toward the hallway leading to the study. Start with the histories in section 1. Then, you'll move through each other section every day for a month. Got it? Cain groaned in the affirmative, his stomach growling again as if protesting the idea. We hit the motherlode on that dungeon, Penny continued, finally looking up with an annoyingly chipper smile. Might even finally get these windows fixed. She gestured dramatically to the cracked glass behind her desk, which had apparently been a problem long enough to become part of the HQ's charm. Cain raised an eyebrow. Glad to see you're making the best of it. Any other surprises? Actually, yeah. Penny reached into a drawer and pulled out a sleek silver card, tossing it to him. He caught it, turning it over to see the broad logo gleaming on the surface. I loaded some pay on your account. Use your aid to activate it. Cain blinked, looking at the card. Pay? Already? Is this, like, normal or? Don't expect nearly that much every time, Penny interrupted, smirking. This was definitely an anomaly. But hey, nice first day. Cain's stomach growled again as he stared at the card. Guess I can eat something better than vending machine sandwiches now. Also, Penny added with a sly grin, don't spend it all in one place. And by that, I mean do spend it all in one place. I want your trash car out of the back lot ASAP. Cain froze mid-step, narrowing his eyes. My car? Penny leaned back, her grin widening. Yeah. Consider it a bonus for a good first day. Cain couldn't help but laugh. You're serious? I get my car now. Drive something that doesn't embarrass the rest of us, and we'll call it even, Penny said, already returning to her notes. Now get moving. Those books aren't going to read themselves. Cain started toward the study, shaking his head with a bemused grin. As he passed the doorway, Penny called after him one more time. Oh, by the way, she said, her tone more formal. I made it official with the Dungeon Regulation and Oversight Bureau. Welcome to the Hollow Blade, Grim. Cain kept walking, raising a casual thumbs up behind him like it was no big deal. But as he disappeared into the study, a huge smile spread across his face.